What's up, guys? This is Mania. I'm coming to you with a brand new episode of Why I Love This Card, and this week I'm doing Santa Claus. I thought it was fitting because this is the holiday season, although I would like to make the argument that it's not based off of Santa Claus, but actually Krampus, and I'm going to show you guys how you can use this card to cramp your opponent's style. I am very, very sorry for that pun. Um, anyway, let's just get into the stats of the thing. It is a level 6 Light Fiend type monster and has 1200 attack and 2500 defense. So you can special summon this card from your hand to your opponent's side of the field in face-up defense position by attributing one monster they control, and in the end phase, the controller of this card can draw one card. So even if you give your opponent this card, but you can't get it back onto your side of the field, you don't draw the card, your opponent draws the card. It's like a little bit of a thank you. This effect that he has where he can special summon himself is very similar to that of the Kaiju archetype. The fact that you contribute your opponent's monster, which is non-targeting, by the way, and just essentially wipe whatever card that you don't want on their field, and get no destruction effect off of it, get no stupid like non-targeting. Like, you can just get around that. The one big difference is that you have to special summon them in defense mode, unlike unlike all the Kaijus, which you have to summon in attack position. That makes it a little bit more difficult to run over, seeing the fact that it is 1200 attack. But it's not impossible to work around. There are cards like Owner Seal and Remove Brainwashing where you can actually get it back to your side of the field and then get the draw at the end of the turn. Would you do that normally? Unless you're playing Kaijus, not necessarily. There are ways to get around this card, but yeah, like without having to attack over or to steal it back. But all the same, it's still pretty decent, even if you're not playing Kaijus. Moving on, Neo-Spacian Grand Mole is also a pretty useful card for this, in terms that it can actually loop. You can infinitely get just tributing off one of your opponent's monsters, summon Neo-Spacian Grand Mole, attack into Claws with Grand Mole, and then cycling them both back in your hand, and then main phase 2, tribute off another monster your opponent has. And they're still going to get the draw if you choose to do it twice, but regardless, it can still be very, very disruptive. Moving on, another great card to get rid of with this card is number 101 Silent Honor Arc, everybody's favorite extra deck card. The fact that it's very hard to get rid of this guy, and the fact that if he would be destroyed, you can just detach an Xyz material from him instead. You can get some insane spot removal with this card instead of having to either spend a ton of resources trying to get rid of it and just summon Claws over it and just cycle it back in any way, shape, or form. Just get rid of this off the field with Castell, whatever. It's just a lot easier to deal with Claws than it is with Honor Arc. Moving on, this is a great card against Destroyer. A lot of people, as you guys may know, may or may not know, are actually siding in a lot of Kaiju cards, particularly Gameciel, mainly because he is the smallest of the four, just to get around the Cosmo cards. And that is because Cosmo Dark Destroyer, as well as the rest of the big ships, have that little nasty effect when they are destroyed by a card effect or battle. You can special summon one level 7 or lower Cosmo monster from your deck. The fact that they can't be targeted by an opponent's card effects is also kind of difficult to deal with, and Santa Claus and Kaiju monsters are great, or have a great matchup against these guys, just simply because they can easily get around them and be very, very disruptible and prevent them from getting this special summon plus. You also can't chain Cosmo Farm Girl to their effect because of the fact that it is a summon and you're tributing off one of your opponent's monsters as a cost. You can't they can't actually activate Farm Girl's effect in order to move around it. It's the same way as if you were special, like normal summoning a level 5 or 6 monster by tributing off a monster. You can't activate an effect of whatever monster that it is if it's a quick play effect and then chain it because they're being tributed. It's a cost. It's different. Moving on, Magic Specters. They can't be targeted. It's not the best matchup for Claws or Kaiju, just simply because Magic Specters, because they are pendulum monsters, when they are tributed, they are sent to the extra deck rather than the graveyard, and they can just easily get those cards back the next turn and possibly get some pluses, especially with Magic Specters, because whenever they're summoned, you can add another Magic Specter card, depending on what it is, to your hand and that can be somewhat disrupting to you, and the fact that you're giving them a draw. It's just be careful in using this card against Magispectors. Just simply because you don't want to tribute over Raccoon because that gives them a ridiculous plus over that the next turn. The next interesting card is March of the Monarchs. That I want to talk about, and that's because Monarchs are going to be a thing next month. It's inevitable. They are going to have their moment again. uh, and the fact that they do play March of the Monarchs is a little bit concerning because it has that extra effect that can't be targeted or destroyed by card effects. Um, so they can't be Regeki'd. They cannot be negated. Their effects can't be negated by targeting effects like Effect Veiler, or Fiendish Chain or Breakthrough Skill. They have to be hit by splashable effects like Mind Drain, lose one turn, in order for them to, well, not necessarily lose one turn because they're not being special summoned, but all the same, it's going to be very, very difficult to deal with just getting them off the field. And cards like Santa Claus and Kaijus are able to do that very easily because they can't really do anything to prevent you from tributing off their monsters because that's what they want to do, and they do sometimes get some pluses off of that, but it's not always the same. So it just depends on the card. Like the Vassals, I believe, which are a huge support archetype for the Monarchs, if they're playing the Light Vassal, you're not going to want to tribute over it for a Santa Claus because they might get a plus off of that just because of the way that the archetype works. But a card like March of the Monarchs, it's somewhat, if they can get it to work, it's very hard to play around. Sometimes they play two, sometimes they play one. It just depends on the build. But in general, this is a very difficult deck to get around. And the fact that Kaijus and Santa Claus decks don't actually play from the extra deck too often, it actually becomes a somewhat decent matchup for them. It's not like the best matchup, obviously, because the deck is ridiculous, but all the same, it's not the worst thing in the world. Finally, I want to talk about the worst possible matchup for this card, and that is Perform Mages. This deck is insane, and we know this simply because of the power that it has and the power that it's going to be getting in the next set. The fact that it's just the fact that there are a lot of ways to deal with this deck, and the fact that they get a lot of effects off of being destroyed, being sent to the extra deck, and the fact that they're level 4s and the rank 4 engine is stupid. But the Perform Mages really suffer the least from Santa Claus, and just sending them to the extra deck is not a huge deal. Like, yes, Flame Mascot, you avoid the destruction effect, and you avoid them being able to special summon a Perform Mage monster from their hand or deck, but all the same, like, they can just recycle it the next turn and use it regardless. So, in all honesty, this is the worst card to go up against, the worst deck to go up against if you're playing Santa Claus, and giving them the draw is not that good if you're not playing Kaijus or a deck that uses Owner's Seal or Remove Brainwashing. So, thank you guys for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and as always, guys, have a nice day.